All right. So it usually takes a couple minutes for people to move over. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Emily and Kristen, Elizabeth, Liz. Good morning. If you guys can hear me, maybe we can go ahead and say hello in the chat. It'll take a minute here. Oops. Let's say good morning. Hi. How you doing, Emily? In Annapolis. Yay. All right. Well, that's always nice to hear that people can actually hear us. That's a big phew. I I was telling Rachel yesterday that I log on as soon as I get into the office because for some reason I'm always anxious that today's the day the internet's not going to work. And
It's
now we
Murphy's
have the
Law, so.
yay. Good morning, Donna. So nice that everybody's here. We have a few minutes while people are getting on, so we're going to just chat. I was saying, looking, Rachel, I was thinking the first presentation that we gave together or you gave here was like in 2017.
It's been a while.
Maybe, yeah, it was early too. So it was probably, yeah, it was a long time ago because I was actually going through and looking at, I was going to share this morning all of the different presentations that you've given. Oh my gosh. I need to just go back and listen to them all again. I have a thick notebook from all the notes I've taken from all the presentations. So my daughter, my children, thank you for all the great advice that you've given.
Oh, that's sweet.
Which is fantastic. Good morning, Lizmara. I hope I said that right. It's nice to see everybody. At least here, it's a beautiful day. So it's going to be 80 degrees today. So it's like, okay, summer's coming.
It is around the corner for sure. We've had a couple of glimpses where we are of the really hot weather, but not quite here yet.
I know. Warning, I already gave the warning to Rachel that unfortunately I had to bring my dog here with me today. So she's happy on the bully stick. We'll see how long that lasts. I have toys, I have little treats, I have everything. Hopefully she will stay silent in the background. But she is really cute. So everyone likes a cute dog, right?
For sure. Like where we need to go when we're feeling stressed or anxious or overwhelmed. Just look at cute dogs, cute cats.
Right. It's that time of year too, right? Where everybody is so busy and crazy. It's almost like right around the holidays and the kids are just so burnt out. They're just ready to be done, right? I think parents are ready to be done.
I was just doing a Q&A last night inside of my group and there were, I don't know, 30 parents there. And we kept hearing this pattern of my kids, just all of a sudden, their behavior is so different. And then I said, let me just propose something because I'm hearing this a lot. Is May almost like the holidays in terms of busyness, where everything's packed in and all the parents were like, yes, yes, yes. And we can even ask parents here, like, it's just May, everything gets packed in, all the graduation and the teacher appreciation week and this and that. And kids sense us, they sense all the busyness and their behavior changes, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, it is crazy. And my daughter dances, so this is when all her dance competitions are and
all the sports stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
All the sports stuff, everything's yeah, and some of the sports are ending, which I think are great for the kids because there's all that like end of year schoolwork.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say it's 9 o'clock. Good morning to everybody. My name is Debbie Rosen, and I am the founder and owner of the Study Pro. And Lindsay Toms is in the background, making sure everything's going well. So, good morning, Lindsay. And she is also an owner here, a co-owner. And of course, we're going to formally welcome, there's Lindsay. We're going to formally welcome Rachel here in a couple of slides. But of course, Rachel Bailey is joining us. We're always so excited to have her. And just a couple of things I want to share. First of all, we are recording this. So for anybody who is, curious about that, because we get that often and we'll provide the slides in a PDF format and all of this and a whole bunch of other presentations that we have on our YouTube page. So I just wanted to share a little bit if you don't know anything about the Study Pro. So we are an executive function and study skill center. And what that means is that all of the things that your student may be struggling with on the right, chunking, tracking work, getting started, all of the things that we see as common challenges in school. We call those process oriented challenges versus content. When you have content challenges, obviously tutors can help, so math and science, English. But on the process side, of the things you see on the right, that's really where the executive functions come to play. So that is what we focus on, and we do a number of things to support kids. I'm sitting here in our homework center. We also have one-to-one executive function coaching. I'll talk in a minute about summer study skills courses, writing coaching. We have writing course over the summer. And that's exactly what we have. Normally, we have who's coming next, but because of the time of year, Rachel, you are our finals finale, right? So we save the best for last for sure. And if you're interested in summer, there's a lot of things that we do here. We're actually exceptionally busy in the summer. We do have our study skills and strategies course, fourth grade, all the way through college. So college courses are we only offer in the summer. And then we've launched math coaching. So our math support in our homework center has been so popular. And some of our homework center coaches, Fox in particular, if you guys know him out there, will be coaching, doing math coaching to help with those math summer packets over the summer. Writing coaching, writing courses. So if you're interested, please go to our website. There's a summer page. So please, Lindsay just provided that link, or you can find it in that QR code. So with that, I was just sharing with Rachel that she and I have known each other for quite a number of years. And I admire her so greatly professionally and, of course, personally. And I was noting that you did, Rachel, a number of presentations, everything from fostering internal motivation, making deposits, 5 ways to better connect with your child, small changes to help your children's big emotions, which is a specialty of yours, how to stay calm when your kids push your buttons. And I was mentioning earlier that I have like a notebook this thick of all the notes. So we're very excited today for you to provide an encore presentation because you present that before on self-esteem. And I'm going to stop sharing my slide here so that you can start sharing yours. But everybody here is in for a big treat because what I love about Rachel is that she tells us what to do and say to help. And so with that, I'm going to introduce you, Rachel. I know you'll talk a little bit about yourself, but thank you again for being here. And I'll put myself on mute and give my dog lots of treats. So hopefully you won't hear her in the background.
Thank you so much, Debbie, for that warm welcome. That was very sweet of you. You know, I'm your biggest fan as well. And my daughter has been to the Study Pro. So I feel like my kids have benefited from you as well. I appreciate it. So welcome to everybody. I am Rachel Bailey and very thrilled to talk to you about something that is a huge passion of mine, which is raising children with healthy self-esteem, even in a high pressure culture. Now, I will say that I am a former therapist. You'll hear more about my background in a moment, but I'm a former therapist. Specifically, I was a therapist for mostly adolescents and teens. And one of the things that I noticed underlying almost all of the clients that I had when I was a therapist, whether they had anxiety or depression or eating disorder, self-harm behavior, was low self-esteem. And so early on, I have always been interested in this topic of how can we help kids, obviously with the presenting issue, but how do we help foster healthy self-esteem, especially in some areas, no matter where you're from. Often kids will look around and they'll say, but they're really great, they're really smart, they're really funny, they're really pretty. How do we still help them feel good about themselves? How do we help them turn inside and feel good about themselves? So that's what I'll be talking about today. So I'll just give you a little bit of an introduction, and I tend to be pretty interactive when I speak. So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to put things into the chat. And the first thing I would like to hear as I'm introducing myself is the ages of your kids and where you're from. I would love to hear that. So I'm going to start talking about myself, but I will be looking at the chat to see what comes up. So the ages of your kids and where you're from. So I myself am a mom of 2. My kids are 10 and 13 in 4th and 7th grades. And just because I don't read out loud what you're saying, believe me, I am looking at it. So I appreciate all the comments coming in. In addition to being a mom, I have a master's degree in clinical psychology, and I have a certification actually in a number of different parenting paradigms. Positive discipline was the first one that I ever got. And my background, as I mentioned, I've been in the field for actually, the field of psychology for about 18 years now. I started working with kids and with teens. So when I first started, one of my first things that I did when I was still in graduate school and pre-graduate school, I was an ADHD coach for adolescents. So, working with kids with ADHD, helping them in school, helping them with their school, at home, cleaning their rooms, things like that. I was also what's called an in-home mentor. So I was going into people's homes and helping with the family dynamics, trained as a psychotherapist. Again, most of my psychotherapy work was with adolescents with adolescents. And then what happened was I was working with kids, I was working with teens, and I realized, wait a second. If I really want to make a bigger difference in families and teens' lives, even, I need to start working with parents. So about 13 years ago, I shifted. I don't work with any kids or teens anymore. I shifted and I started working with parents. And really, what I have always wanted to do is to help parents understand kids' behavior and their motivation and their emotions and their attitudes. Because when we understand, so many good things can happen for our kids. So I've done a lot with parents. I used to be more of a general parenting expert. Now, what I really focus on, where I find there is sort of a big hole that a lot of parents struggle with, and traditional strategies don't work, is I focus on parents who are raising kids with what I call big emotions. So kids who are anxious, kids who are sensitive, meaning, maybe they get a little upset when you even offer the smallest critique. Their reactions seem almost disproportionate. So kids who have difficulty being flexible. So sometimes these are called strong-willed kids. So basically kids who feel strongly, and they're not always feeling strongly outward. Sometimes kids are, having these big meltdowns or anger or irritability, but sometimes they're holding these feelings in. So really, just as long as they feel strongly, that's who I help. And what I really find, especially as I have narrowed into this field, although I'm going to give you tips for all kids, even if you don't have a child with big emotions, this presentation will help. But what I have found is, especially kids with big emotions, and I myself am what's called a highly sensitive person. So this is true of me too. I feel things strongly, is that they're much more higher risk for low self esteem. So I'm really what I do, what I specialize when I focus on every day is fostering resilience for kids who may struggle a little bit, but doing it in a way that also fosters healthy self esteem. Because what I find is often the way we do foster resilience is at the expense of healthy self esteem. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about that, but really focusing obviously on how do we foster healthy self esteem, no matter who your child is, whether they feel strongly or not. So obviously I do lots of workshops, trainings. I have a podcast that now has over 250 episodes. I have programs that I specifically focus on. I have a membership called Raising Resilience, where I teach how to regulate yourself as a parent, how you can help your child regulate. I teach limit setting. I teach fostering resilience, all of those topics. So that is enough about me. I love all the answers that have come in. I really appreciate it. I'm actually going to shift questions, though, I will tell you. So I want to ask you another question. As we are talking about healthy self esteem, I would love to ask you, what are your thoughts about the benefits of healthy self esteem? Why do we care if our children feel good about themselves? I mean, isn't that like a luxury? Wouldn't it just be nice if they have healthy self esteem? What do you think are the benefits of healthy self esteem? And I know there's a little bit of a lag after I ask the question, so I'm going to wait to see what comes up. We already have responses. Better resilience, for sure. There's actually a huge overlap between self esteem and resilience. So they're not the same thing, but there's a huge overlap. It has a direct impact on other areas, for sure. It's a key to a healthy and happy life. And when it all comes down to it, we really want our kids to be happy, right? And very honestly, yes, our kids are going to be a lot happier if they have healthy self esteem. Confidence is central to trying. This helps them deal with obstacles. Yes, it absolutely fosters self-discipline, for sure. When you feel good, you're more successful and productive. So I'm reading people's responses. These are excellent. Yes. Avoids immediate roadblocks, self-fulfilled. These are great answers. I absolutely agree. Keep them coming. Keep typing. What I will say, to sort of just put a bow on everything that you were all talking about, is that healthy self-esteem in the research is correlated with all the things we want for our kids. Healthier self-esteem means healthier relationships. It means we're more likely to reach our full potential. We're more likely to choose jobs that align with us. We're more likely to avoid peer pressure. So our kids are more likely to avoid peer pressure because they don't feel like their value comes from giving in to their friends. When kids have healthy self esteem, they are more confident. They're less likely to have anxiety and depression. So, yes, healthy self esteem is correlated with all of these and happiness. Someone, a few people mentioned that. So, yeah, absolutely. Healthy self esteem is really correlated with all of the things we want for our kids. Yep, well rounded through life. Yeah, we're more likely when we have healthy self esteem, we're more likely to take those positive risks that allow us to be more well rounded. So it really is the foundation for so many things that you all mentioned. Now, I do want to talk about what self esteem is. Obviously, I want to define it for you, but I want to start by talking about what healthy self esteem is not. Healthy self esteem is not this belief that, oh, I'm pretty enough, or I'm smart enough, or I'm funny enough, or I'm this enough. Self esteem is not this belief that I have this one quality, I'm really good at it, so I feel really good about myself. In fact, what I have found over working with human beings in a clinical setting for the past almost 20 years is that the people who really focus on those external factors tend to be less confident. They don't have as healthy self esteem. And I will say this: I have a family member. I don't want to get too much into this because my family member, you might be able to figure out who it is. So just for sake of confidentiality, I will say I have a family member who's extremely successful, and I'm very close with this family member. And I remember maybe about 10 or 15 years ago when this person was just in the beginning of their career, said to me, "You know why I work so hard, and you know why I'm so successful? Because I'm afraid one day that the people are going to find out who I really am." They're going to say, "Oh, you're really not as great as you think." So I have to work my butt off every single day. And yeah, it's led to a lot of success. I'm kind of insecure that people are going to find out who I really am. And often when we don't have this belief that we are enough, which you're going to find out in a minute, I'm giving you a little hint about what self esteem is. When we're working so hard to be this enough or that enough, we actually don't really feel good about ourselves. So self esteem is not this belief that, oh, I'm this enough and everything's okay. What self esteem is then is I'm going to give two main factors that lead to positive or healthy self esteem. So the first is a genuine belief that we are worthy of respect and acceptance as we are right now. Not if I'm smart enough or rich enough or pretty enough or I got a good enough grade on that test or I have enough friends or it is I am worthy of respect and acceptance as I am, recognizing I have strengths, I have areas that I could definitely improve on, but I am worthy of respect and acceptance as I am. Yeah, I'm seeing the hearts, the love it. I agree. Like, I could not want more for my kids too than to believe I am enough as I am. And what's interesting is this isn't a saying, well, I'm enough as I am, so I don't want to work harder. This is, I'm enough as I am, so I can push myself because guess what? If I don't do well, it's okay because I'm enough as I am. This actually is a springboard to trying harder. And as I said before, taking those healthier risks and growing as a human being. Someone said it's hard to feel that way as an adult. I will say, yes, 100%. And it's really hard to feel that way as a child, as an adolescent as well. So, yes, I'm going to teach you how to do that though for your kids. You're going to walk away today with some really practical strategies. Okay, so first is this genuine belief. We can't convince our kids that this is true. They have to genuinely believe it, and I'll show you how to get there. That we are worthy of respect and acceptance as we are. The second component of this is a genuine belief that we can rely on ourselves to handle whatever we face. A belief that if I am struggling to ask a teacher how to do something, I can eventually figure it out. A belief that if my friends are mean to me, I know how to handle this, that I can trust myself. I know that I'm going to be able to get myself through this. And I have to tell you that my husband is, I'm not so good at this part. I'm a little bit better with the first, but I'm not so good at this part. And I remember asking him very early when we were dating, I was like, you're pretty confident. Like, what is it that leads to this confidence? You ask those questions in the beginning. And he said, I just feel like I can figure out whatever I have to figure out. And that like blew my mind because I'm the youngest of I've with siblings and step siblings. There are 8 of us. So I'm the youngest of 8. So I never really felt that confident because everyone did a lot for me. So I'm like, oh my gosh, people can actually feel that way. What's interesting is that confidence, what I've learned over the years clinically, is that confidence doesn't come from, oh, I'm good at everything. Confidence comes from, even if I'm not good at something, I can handle it. I can figure it out. I can be uncomfortable and I'll be okay. So again, these two components, I'm worthy of respect as I am, and I can rely on myself. This is really the foundation of healthy self-esteem. So I have another question for you. Now that you know the definition, what do you think prevents kids these days? And I'm talking kids, school age kids, teenagers, But what do you think prevents them from having positive or healthy self esteem? What do you think is going on? So, someone said school culture. Absolutely. Middle school. Enough said, right? I have a daughter in middle school. Enough. That's all you have to say, right? Media, social media, other kids, lots of social media coming in for sure. Peer pressure, insufficient praise, cyberbullying, parents doing too much and criticism, negativity among friends, competitiveness, bullies, comparisons. I absolutely agree with all these messages about what the standard is, competitive environment, parental, I love that in quotation marks, parental guidance, right? We're guiding, but really we're like fixing and pushing. Yeah. They're from everywhere. Fixed mindset environment. Yeah, absolutely. Always having to be the best, being told, I'm proud of you. Competitiveness. These are amazing responses. And I agree with all of this. So you basically just took the next slide away from me because that's how I'm going to repeat what a lot of you said. But I wanted you to start to think about like, what are our kids going through? All of these things are what they're going through. And the things you mentioned, and I'm going to mention on the next slide, they really do just kind of chip away. Even if a child, and most young children have fairly good self-esteem that, especially because they're learning to walk, they're learning to talk. They're like, hey, I can do this thing called life when I'm 2 years old, 3 years old. They have, they're feeling okay about themselves, and it starts to get chipped away as they start to go to school and things like that. So let's talk a little bit more. I'm going to talk briefly because many of you really mentioned these already. So the obstacles to positive self-esteem. Number one, the way kids are treated. So many of you mentioned this. The way they're treated by us. We tend to be very critical, which comes from our fear and anxiety. I work a lot with parents on, and I'm one of these parents too. I'm naturally an anxious person. So our fear and anxiety tends to make us critical. It tends to make us push our kids and just, you didn't finish your homework? What are you talking about? Are you really wearing that? What are you doing? Because we're afraid that our kids are going to get judged or hurt or not do well in school. So we treat them a certain way, kind of erodes at their self esteem. Their peers, for sure, especially someone mentioned middle school. I do a lot of talking to parents of middle schoolers. And what I will say is that middle schoolers are mean. They just are mean. And what happens when someone walks into middle school is that all of a sudden they almost like start to have to put up a wall. If most of you have been through this already, they put up a wall because there's so much attacking in middle school because middle schoolers are afraid. And I tell my middle schooler this: middle schoolers would rather attack others than be attacked. So there's a lot of attacking. But even in high school, this still happens. Even in younger kids, this happens. We talked about social media for sure, the comparison on social media. We know that people put the best stories out there on social media. Our kids sort of know that intellectually, but it still hurts their feelings, still hurts our feelings too when we see things on social media. And then the traditional media. If you think about it, a lot of people are paid a lot of money to make your kids feel bad in the traditional media, even, or the social media influencers, because if your kids don't feel bad, they won't buy the products that are going to make them feel better. So there's a motivation incentive for traditional media to make them feel bad. Also, people have mentioned this in the comments, the standards they're held to. When I used to give this talk in person, and I won't ask you to post this in the chat right now because you might not want to do that, but when I used to do this talk in person, I would say, how many of you could actually get into the same, if you went to college, how many of you could get into the same college that you went to? And it was probably at least half the people said, I couldn't even get into that school anymore. When we were growing up, it was great to have a 4.0. But now you have to have like a 4.5 to get into those really top colleges. And if you don't have, it's not enough to just join a club. You have to be president of the club, and the club has to be like green and amazing for the planet. Like, it's so hard. The standards have risen and risen and risen. So kids are hearing this, and it trickles down to so young. I will tell you, my daughter's in 7th grade, and she's already starting to hear things about college and get anxious. It trickles down. It really does. So people mentioned this one also, lack of experience with discomfort. I talked about this a lot more pre-COVID because there was a lot more saving of our children before COVID. We couldn't save them during COVID. Kids faced discomfort, lots of struggle. But even so, our instinct is to, clear the path. It started as helicopter parenting, then it went to snowplow parenting. Like, we're clearing this path for our kids. And the last piece of this is, not only at that point do they have the lack of experience, now they have some experience with discomfort, couldn't get around it with COVID. But here's the bigger issue. And this is really what I focus on when I talk about resilience, is they don't have the tools to handle discomfort. So they may face it, but they don't know how to face it in a healthy way. So they are, struggling because their friends may have moved on without them, or they're struggling academically and they genuinely don't know how to handle it. So these are some of the reasons that they don't believe and accept themselves for who they are, and they don't feel capable and competent. All right. So let's move on. And I actually want to do a little experiential exercise with you now. It'll just take a minute or two. But I want to actually put you in a situation where you feel what it feels like to have low self esteem. Now, some of you may have felt this in your life before, but I just want to put you in the shoes of a child who may have low self esteem. And I'm not even going to ask you to pretend to be a child. I'm actually going to I'm going to have you pretend you're an adult, or actually you are an adult. So imagine what this is like. And the situation that I'm about to put you in, some of you may have actually experienced. I know I have friends who genuinely experience this, but imagine you're an adult and you move to another country. And in that other country, they speak another language, and the culture is very, very different from what you're used to. And to be successful in that other country, you have to learn the language. And that you have to kind of get embedded in the culture. You have to join things, you have to get a job, you have to become part of the community. It's going to be really important that you do kind of start to fit in so that you feel good. So you move to this country, you kind of have your goals in mind, want to learn the language, want to become part of this community, part of the culture. But what you realize is, especially now that you're an adult, it's harder to learn a language. And you're trying to learn the language, but you're really, really struggling. And the more you try to learn the language, the more stressed you get when you realize, oh my gosh, this is actually really hard, not doing a good job. You get more stressed. It becomes even harder because we all know when we're stressed, we don't learn as well. So you're not able to, learn this language. And because you're not able to learn the language, you're not able to get a job easily, and you're not able to join in the community groups. And all the things that you were worried about, all of your goals, you're really, really struggling to attain. So you're feeling very lonely. You're noticing that people are going around you living their life, but you feel like you don't fit in and you can't get there because the harder you try to learn the language, the more stressed you become, and it's just not working. This is actually what it feels like to have low self-esteem. That you don't fit in, you don't belong, you're not okay just because you're you. You clearly don't fit in because you can't fit into the things around you, and you can't rely on yourself to get out of this. This is what it feels like. So you can imagine that's not a great feeling. Now I'm gonna have a question for you coming up, because this is what we do when our kids are in this place. And I want you to feel this now that I've kind of put you in this place, which doesn't feel very good. Sorry, I'll get you out of it in a minute. But here's what I want you to imagine. Now that you're in this place, you don't feel very good about yourself, about your ability to get out of this situation. Someone from home, a family member, calls you up and they say, hey, how are you doing? And you say, you know what? It's actually really hard. I'm having trouble learning the language. I'm having trouble making friends. I'm having trouble getting a job. And this person on the other end of the line, they love you and they hate seeing you struggle. So what they say to you is, oh, you'll get a job. Look at how many jobs you've had in the past. You'll learn the language. You're fine. You're smart. You did so well at school. Now, I have a question for you. Does this make you feel better? This is a yes or no question. Yes, it makes you feel better. And all of a sudden you say, you're right. I had so many other jobs. I feel better. Say yes or no. No, if it does not. All right, we're seeing the responses coming in. No, this does not make you feel better. And yet, this is what we do for our kids when we see them struggling. We say, oh, they say, I'm stupid. We say, you're not stupid. Look at all these tests you did so well on. They say, I have no friends. Of course you have friends. That neighbor just invited you down. What we do is we invalidate their experience. And it doesn't all of a sudden snap us out of it. If you're in this situation, you're like, you're right. That's not what happens. So I want to teach you what to do differently. Most importantly, I want to teach you how to foster healthy self-esteem on a regular basis, even before your child gets to that point where they're saying, I don't like myself. Right, someone said, ugh, I didn't mean to do that to you. Let's lift you back out. Now you're no longer in that snare. I want you to feel good. And I'm going to even empower you now. So I'm going to empower you with this, with tools to do something differently. I actually live in this situation and no, it does not help. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for being real about that. And it doesn't help. It really doesn't. I'm going to tell you what to do instead, though. And this is something, if you're in this situation, you can start to do this for yourself, because we can actually boost our own confidence by doing these things. So I'm going to teach you from now on some strategies you can use. These strategies hopefully are extremely practical. As Debbie said, I like to tell you what to say, what to do. That's like my favorite thing. So we're going to get into the weeds with these 4 tools that I'm going to teach you. So let me just give you an overview based on what I mentioned is the foundation of positive self-esteem. So remember, I said the first thing is this genuine belief that we are worthy of respect and acceptance as we are. So I'm going to teach you 2 tools to do this. The first tool, and I'll tell you how to do this in a minute, is to treat your children with respect, even or especially when you don't agree with them. The next tool I'm going to teach you is to let them have their feelings. And I will teach you how to do this in a moment. The other 2 tools are related to that second piece of healthy self-esteem. Remember, it was that genuine belief that we can rely on ourselves to handle life's obstacles. So the third tool I'm going to teach you is to focus on skills, and the fourth is to empower them to find solutions. So these 4 tools will really lead to this genuine belief that they are worthy of acceptance as they are, and this genuine belief that they can rely on themselves. Even if they're in a new country, even if they're in a new situation, anything new, they will be able to handle it. All right, let's dig into that first set of tools to foster a belief in their worthiness, or their belief that they are worthy of acceptance as they are. So treating them with respect, even or especially when you don't agree with them. And before I get into this, here's what I will say. I'm teaching you 4 tools. It's a lot. So as I'm going through these, just think about which one is most realistic for me. I'm not saying you need to do all 4 of these things at all. I'm saying it's like a buffet. Pick and choose what you will. All of these will help. So the first one, again, treat them with respect, especially when you don't agree with them. So just a little reminder of what self-esteem is. We're really focusing on that first piece right now. So here's what we tend to do. We see the situation from our perspective, and we try to convince our children to see things our way. So in that phone call that I mentioned from a loved one, when you're in another country and you're really struggling, that loved one is feeling really uncomfortable because they're seeing you sad and upset. And so they're trying to get you to see their perspective so that you feel better. It's really coming from their need for you to be less uncomfortable. And this is what we do as parents. Our child says, I have no friends. I'm stupid. I can't do this. I'll never be able to do this. And we want them to see our perspective. We want them to change their perspective. That does not teach them that they are worthy of acceptance and respect as they are. That does not teach them that. That teaches them you need to change and see my view in order to feel better. And that's often what kids are feeling with. As a former therapist, I can tell you that's how they're feeling. So, what we want to do is instead of seeing it from our perspective, we go into their world. Instead of even seeing their world from our world. So, let's say a child says, and I'm going to go deeper into this, I have no friends. Instead of saying, oh my gosh, my child is saying they have no friends, I can see how they'd be upset by that, but that's still seeing their world from our world. We genuinely need to get into their world. And the action that I suggest, because I'm all about action and how do you do all this, is to get to a place where you can say, no wonder. You are not agreeing with them. You're just getting into their world because that's genuinely what they need at first. They need to feel supported where they are. You're actually, if I have 2 hands, this is your world, this is their world, you're literally leaving your world temporarily to get into their world with them so they feel less alone where they are. So what does this look like? Let's say, actually, you know what? Yeah, let me use this one. I'm going to also go back to a child saying, I have no friends. I thought that's what I had here. But let's say your child yelled at his sister. Your child was really, really mean and said something disrespectful. What we usually do in those situations is we say, you can't talk to your sister like that. You need to be nicer. And we try to convince them all the reasons. This is our family value and we don't do that. And you're going to ruin your relationship. We try to convince them that the way we see things is the right way. You want to shift that. And I remember now why I use this example because it's even harder when kids are mean instead of sad. That's why I changed this. I'll still go to the sad example. But when kids are mean, we want to shove our information down their throat. And I will tell you, kids who misbehave, they struggle with self-esteem as well. So here's what you want to do. You want to get to a place where you say, no wonder you yelled at your sister because she keeps walking into your room. No wonder you yelled at your sister because she's been asking you a million questions and you're trying to do your homework. No wonder you yelled at your sister. So you think, what is their perspective? No wonder you did this. No wonder you feel this way. One of the things I actually teach in my program is what I call of course because statements. Course because statements are where you say, of course you yelled at your sister because, and you actually, this statement allows you to get into your child's world. Of course you did that because she kept walking into your room, because she was making loud noises and you were trying to study, because, and you genuinely get to where they are. This is not condoning behavior. This is helping them feel respected where they are. And I teach how to change behavior for a living. So then we can start to use those behavior strategies. But we have to start where they are. So let me go to that other example where a child is sad, because you might want to know what that looks like. So if a child says, I have no friends, our instinct is to try to say, yes, you do. We want to say, first of all, tell me more about that. And if they say, well, I didn't eat with anyone at the lunch table today. Well, of course you feel that way. That must be lonely. Of course, or no wonder you're saying that. That sounds really hard. You're just getting there with them. This teaches them to trust their instinct. So again, I said, especially when you don't agree with them, see their perspective, because they know when you don't agree, and they feel all the time that we are trying to change their perspective, and they stop trusting their perspective. All right, so that's tool number one. I just want to ask a yes no question. Is anyone already trying to do this? Say yes if you're trying to do this. You could say no if you're not. Say yes if you do try this. Okay, someone says no, but I will. A few yeses, excellent. I'm assuming people who are saying no are not going to type so much. Yes, yes, and sometimes no, no, but I will. Yes, but inconsistently. This is one of the easiest things you can do to help a child start to trust themselves and trust their instinct. Excellent. Okay. And don't worry if you're saying no, you can start to do this. It looks easy. It's not that easy, but even if you do this once or twice, it can make a big difference. Yeah, it's hard in the moment. I have to calm down first. That's really important. There's a reason we can't, when we are dysregulated, we can't see other people's perspectives, just for the record. Like, our brains won't allow us to. So yes, we have to regulate ourselves first. That's so much of what I teach. So it's a good point. All right, tool number 2, let them have their feelings. So again, we're working on this piece of, when we let them have their feelings, when we see their perspective, we are teaching them that they are worthy of acceptance as they are. It doesn't mean we're letting them stay there. It just means we show them that their perspective has validity, that it makes sense, at least to them, and that helps them trust themselves. All right. So what we usually do when they have these feelings is we tell them all the reasons their feelings are wrong. This is really where we get into that place of, and here's where I'm going to talk about, if I'm sad, if I feel like I have no friends, that's where I'm going to talk about that. So we tell them, let's say a child does say, I have no friends. Again, we say, of course you have friends. The neighbor just invited you over. Or, people are always sending you text messages, or whatever we're saying to them, to try to tell them their feelings are wrong. So that's what we do. That's what they hear. And then they stop trusting their feelings. What they say is, wait a second, they're telling me not to feel that way, but I feel that way. What's wrong with me? That's often where they go, or they start to resent us for telling them their feelings are wrong. So what we're doing is we're listening. We're letting them know they're not alone, or we're not saying anything. We're just being present. I think this is one of the hardest things to do, is to be silent. That's what they need, though. They just need us to be present. So let's get to some action. We're basically helping them feel understood and less alone. So if a child says, I have no friends, all you need to do is listen, is be there, is just be present. What you're teaching them is that their feelings are not scary for you, they learn, oh, feelings must not be scary. I can handle these feelings. This is actually the foundation of resilience, which is the other big topic I teach about. In order to be resilient, a child needs to believe, I can handle these feelings. Most of what happens, and this is coming from me as a former therapist, most of what happens is it's not the feelings that kids have, the stress, the anxiety, that is the problem. It's their fear of their feelings that becomes a problem. So they're afraid of discomfort. They're afraid of being worried. And that's what creates a lot of the clinical problems. We need to teach them they can handle this feeling of, I have no friends, because once this feeling passes, then they can solve the problem. So what does this actually look like? This is what you need to think in your head. I don't need to fix this right now. They just need me to be here. They just need me to respect their experience. So what this looks like, again, is you're not saying very much. You may say, tell me more. You may say, oh, wow. You may say nothing. Here's another yes, no question. Do you find it difficult to stay silent? Say yes if you find it difficult. No if you do not. Yup. Yeah, and all these yeses coming through. It is so hard for us. And I actually want you to put yourself in your child's shoes, or even don't pretend you're a child. When you're really struggling, do you always want someone to come in and fix it? No, we don't. You don't have to answer that one because I want you to answer the first one. It's basically when we are struggling as humans, we just need silence. We just need presence. We just need someone that we know is strong and confident and can handle it. So this is how we help them accept their feelings, not be afraid of their feelings. We just let them happen. And here's what I will tell you about feelings. I love this metaphor. This did not come from me. It comes from Brooke Castillo. She's awesome. Brooke Castillo has this metaphor for feelings, and I think it's amazing. I learned this like many years ago, and I've used it ever since. Feelings are like a beach ball that is floating on the water. So if you try to push that beach ball down, it's just going to pop right back up. We try to push our feelings down, they just pop right back up. But if we actually just let the beach ball pass, it's going to start to float away. That's exactly how feelings work. If we actually let our kids talk about their feelings, or even if they're just quiet, we just let them have their feelings, they're going to start to go away. The big principle of so many types of therapy. Feelings just need to get out, they need to be felt, and they will start to leave. So that's what we want to do. Okay, yeah, I love that beach ball floating. Again, that is not mine. I cannot take credit for that one. Okay, and someone said sometimes I ask, "Do you want me to just listen?" That's a very helpful question for a parent, by the way. That's I'm gonna just kind of Jessica. That was really good advice. What you can always say to your child is, "Do you want me to listen or do you want advice?" That's something I teach parents as well. Do you just want me to listen or do you want advice? That helps us feel better because then we know what our role is. But if they don't know, a lot of kids won't know the answer to that. My I always default to just be quiet for a little while. It's amazing how much more comes out, by the way, when we're quiet. Okay, so now I'm going to shift gears. I have two more tools for you. I'm going to shift gears, and we're going to really foster a belief in their capability. I just mentioned, yeah, asking them is so empowering. I just mentioned how do we help them feel more valuable. Now we're going to shift to how do we help them feel more capable. So obviously, we're not leaving them to wallow in this place of, oh, my feelings are accepted and that's wonderful. We're actually going to help them figure out what to do with all of this. And that leads to tool number three, which is to focus on skills. So we are now, again, focusing on the relying on themselves. What we tend to do, and I'm bringing this one in again because we do this so much when kids misbehave, when they don't do their homework, when they don't clean their room when like they're supposed to, when they are mean to their brother or sister, when they are, getting up from around the dinner table and we want them to sit down. Whenever we are seeing this negative behavior, what we tend to do is try to find the best punishment. And I talk a lot about behavior. That's one of my presentations I do a lot. And what I say is we have such an opportunity here when our kids are misbehaving to foster capability. If instead of trying to find the best punishment, we identify what skills our children are missing and teach them those skills. So it is always possible, 100% of the time, when a child is misbehaving, it is because they are missing some skill. And often it's an emotional regulation skill. They just are. Remember, someone earlier said, I can't see my child's perspective when I'm upset. When humans are upset, we can't do the right thing. So much of this is just missing skills. A child is stressed and they're not doing the right thing. So ultimately, it always comes down to skills. And a lot of the skills it comes down to are executive functioning skills. So you can imagine why I love Debbie so much and the study pro so much and Lindsay so much, because it is so much about the executive functioning skills. You know this in relationship to homework and schoolwork. This is also true in terms of relationships and why a brother is mean to his sister, a sister is mean to her brother. This is all the skills that they are missing. And we can teach how these skills rather than focusing on how do I make you feel worse, we teach them how do I help you do better. So let me give you an example. The action is asking yourself what strategies must be missing or may be missing. So, for example, your child is speaking disrespectfully to you. I'm actually doing what I call a coaching call later, and this is the topic. What do you do when your child is disrespectful to you? I know this. There were a lot of signups for this because this is a really tough one. I'm giving you a couple glimpses into this right now. What do we do when a child is disrespectful? It is so much our instinct, especially because the way we were raised, to say, you can't talk to me like that. I'm taking away your phone. You can't go to your friend's house because you talk to me like that. That doesn't teach them anything. It doesn't teach them what to do when they have a lot of what I call yuck inside or feelings inside. It doesn't teach them what to do with that. And so much of what I teach is, what do you do with these feelings that you have inside so that you're not being disrespectful? But just punishing them is not going to teach them. It's not going to teach them they can rely on themselves. Punishment's an external motivator. It doesn't internally motivate them to do better. So what do? We ask ourselves, what skills do they need to be successful? So in order to not speak disrespectfully, a child needs to be able to understand that they're upset and know how to handle the uncomfortable feeling that's inside. I call that feeling yuck. Know how to handle the yuck. And it's possible. I teach what I call a when then statement. When I feel this way, then I will. And we can actually teach our kids and our teens to regulate themselves. So we can teach them how to do this. We're actually thinking about this in terms of a skill that they're missing instead of a bad behavior. And I want you to remind yourself of this. Teaching them how to do better is not about being permissive. A lot of people, when I talk about disrespect, say, oh, but you're letting them get away with it. If there's no punishment, they're getting away with it. That's the most common thing I hear. We're not being permissive. Remember, my areas of expertise are self-esteem and resilience. And permissive parenting does not lead to healthy self-esteem or resilience. So that is not what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is we say, let's figure out what our child is missing. What emotional regulation skills are they missing? Teach them that, because then what happens is the next time your child is frustrated with you because you told them they can't go to their friend's house because they didn't do their homework, they know how to regulate that feeling. So then they recognize, oh, when I feel overwhelmed with anger or frustration, I know what to do. That boosts their self-esteem. So again, that's kind of another talk. How do we help them do that? Although I can answer questions at the end. If anyone wants me to dive deeper into any of these skills, I can do that. All right, last tool. Now that we've taught them, okay, whenever there's a negative behavior, mood, or attitude, we're going to teach you how to do something different. This last piece is to empower them. So what we tend to do, we talked about this, is solve or fix. We tend to jump in and try to help them feel better. What we want to do is empower them to find their own solutions. And I know a lot of parents get stumped on this because they say, well, I've asked my child what they think they should do, but they don't know. I'm going to get you through that, because we do ultimately want solutions to come from them. So that what we really want to do is ask curiosity questions. This is how we help them find their solution. Now, I'm going to emphasize curiosity questions do not have a motivation or an objective. So we're not trying to get them to see our solution. We're trying to help them find their solution, because even if you get them to your solution, what they're going to believe is, I'm not okay unless mom or dad or a caregiver, whoever you are to them, I'm not okay unless they're around. We want them to rely on themselves, not you. So we want to help them find their own solutions. Even if those solutions are not great solutions, they will learn from that and start to rely on themselves. So how do we do this? Let's say a child says, my teacher doesn't like me. Again, we don't want to say, oh, your teacher doesn't like you. Well, here's what you do. You should write them a note. You should turn in your homework on time more often. We don't want to do that, because again, even if we come up with the best solution, and even if that solution works, what they've learned is, oh, I need someone to tell me what to do. And that doesn't lead to self-trust and self-reliance. So what we're going to do instead, first question you always want to ask your child if they're struggling is, oh, what are you going to do about this? That question can really imply that you believe they have the answer inside of them. Now, chances are 9 out of 10 times they're going to say, I don't know. But I always say start with that question, because you do want them to know you believe that they have the answer inside. They're not going to know, probably, otherwise they wouldn't say that. They would have figured it out on their own. So what do you do when they say, I don't know? We're basically all about empowerment here, right? So the next question I would ask is, can I offer a suggestion? This is a very empowering question, because they can say yes or they can say no. And what I will tell you is, if they say no, they weren't going to listen to you anyway. So you've saved your breath. So you're saying to them, can I offer suggestion? And if they say yes, now they're open. If they say no, what I would say is, okay, if you want a suggestion another time, come to me anytime and we can talk about this. And I will tell you, based on what I know about emotions, when they're out of this yuck emotion, they're much more likely to come back to you, especially if they know you don't have an agenda. Adolescents will always resist an agenda. You all know that. I don't have to tell you that. I do a whole talk on how to talk to teenagers, and that's one of the first things I say. They will resist an agenda. So if they know you don't have an agenda, they're more likely to come back. All right. So let's say they say yes. Woohoo, they've said yes. Here's how you want to empower them. You want to say something like, I'll tell you what I would do, but I'm not you. I'm not 15 years old or 8 years old or 20 years old. What would you do to change my suggestion to make it work for you? So you give them a little foundation because they really might not have any idea, but then you empower them to change it. Or one of the things I used to do when I was a therapist for teenagers is I would say to them, all right, I'm going to give you a suggestion. You can totally demolish my suggestion. You can laugh at it. You can tell me all the reasons it's stupid. As long as every time you do that, you try to make it more realistic for you. So you really want them to process this a little bit and put themselves in that situation where they figure out, what do I do if my teacher doesn't like me? So again, as an adult, I might say, well, if my teacher doesn't like me, I'm going to write a note. Does that work for you? I don't know. Do people even write notes anymore these days, or does it come from text? Like, what does it look like? And you're deferring to them as an expert. So this is how you're empowering them. Notice my tone is very curious. Oh, do you think you should write a note to your teacher? That's not at all. We can't have the agenda. Otherwise, they pull back and it's not very empowering. So ultimately, we want to lead them not to our solutions, but to their solutions. That's how they start to rely on themselves. So what I want to do now that I've taught you the 4 tools is just wrap up what I went through. So you have, remember, I gave you the buffet. You're not doing all of this. Think about which of these is most realistic for me, which fits my personality, which could I start to do fairly easily. So 1, treating them with respect even when you don't agree with them. You're leaving your world temporarily to get into theirs. You're really seeing their perspective. What it does is it teaches them that even though you don't agree with them, you respect them. They are worthy of respect as they are. Even if we're saying, hey, that behavior wasn't great, I understand why you did it. That actually helps them feel respected. And they're more likely to change their behavior when they feel respected than to change their behavior when they feel disrespected. I will tell you that. 2, let them have their feelings. Be present. Say less. Just let them have those feelings so they know they're not alone. That shows them that you don't need them to change and feel better so that you feel better, because that's really why we do it. We do it so that we feel better. They don't need us to change them. They need us to sit with them. Number 3 was to teach those skills. Ideally, you're thinking about executive functioning skills. And number 4 is to empower them, to help guide them to their own solutions so they learn to rely on themselves. When you do these things, they do believe in their worth as they are, and they trust themselves to handle life. Right. So that's what I have for you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change to the next slide where I'm going to talk about the resources I have for just a moment. But if anyone has any questions, this is my favorite part, to be honest. You can start typing them in. I will read the questions and answer them. You can ask questions about self-esteem, resilience, behavior, anxiety. Those are all my kind of areas of specialty, and I would be happy to answer anything. As I'm waiting to see what comes up, just let me tell you what my free resources are. You want to get email tips, you just can go whenever you want to head over to send an email to info@rachel-bailey.com. All you have to do in the subject line is write free tips. That's my team's email address, so they'll know exactly where to put you. I have a podcast called Your Parenting Long Game. My Facebook group is called Your Parenting Long Game Podcast Community. And then if you want to go a little bit deeper, like I mentioned, I have a membership where I talk about setting limits, fostering resilience, all those things. You can find that on my website. So that is a little bit of information where you can get more. Thank you so much, Lindsay. I appreciate that. Posting that. All right. So,
And we did have a question earlier. I'm
okay,
gonna,
great,
you
Debbie.
mind if I throw that? Because there was a question when you're saying just kind of sit and listen. If, for example, they say they have no friends or whatever, one of the questions that Amber asked is, what do you say when they ask, why aren't you saying anything back? Why are you just being quiet? What should you say to them? I
Yeah,
think my daughter might be like,
I get that question all the time. Here's what I would say to that. And when you do this over and over, they're going to know to expect it. But what I say to that is, there's not really much that I could say right now that's going to make you feel better. So I just want to be with you, if that's okay. That's what you say to that. And you also, one of the things when I teach that strategy of not saying much, I would let your kids know ahead of time that you're going to do that. I wouldn't do this out of the blue. I would say, hey, I've noticed that when I'm really upset, I just want someone to be there. So I'm probably going to do that. What do you think about that? That's what I would just prepare them a little bit. But that's what I say to that. There's not much I can say right now that's going to help. Can I just sit here with you? Yeah.
yeah.
And keep in mind, when a child is in yuck, when they're having an uncomfortable feeling, you might get a snarky response back. That's just their yuck talking. So I wouldn't take that so personally. Great question.
Yeah.
Thanks, Deb.
And there's another question I'll kind of help moderate, but he says, Jess asked, when we send our kids to tutoring, et cetera, my daughter gets the message, I'm not smart enough. How do we avoid this beyond saying, we're giving you the tools to succeed? And I'm going to actually add to that because oftentimes kids they do fight the guardrails, right? So they may, we find it all the time. The number one challenge that we have, sorry about my dog, everybody, but the number one, she was quiet the whole time. The number one challenge that we have, sometimes is the kids feel defensive, like, oh, I don't need that help. So,
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the thing is that often they think different is bad. And so if I go back to the question, I'm not smart enough, or how do we avoid, besides saying we're giving you tools to succeed? When I was an ADHD coach, and I'm sure Debbie, you and Lindsay do this all the time, is helping kids understand what ADHD is and that it's not a bad thing. It's just a different way of thinking about things. So it's, yes, we're giving you the tools to succeed, but what I used to say is, I understand how your brain works, and the way your brain works, you could teach me some things. Your brain works, and this is why I loved being an ADHD coach, by the way, because I don't have ADHD. The ADHD brain, I have a daughter with ADHD, is so creative, and my daughter can see something out of nothing. And so one of the things I used to do a lot is, I will teach you something and you teach me something, because they associate different with bad, or they associate ADHD with different. We just need to normalize all of this. And that's really what we want to do, and help them see it just as something that's a part of life. And that's sort of kind of going with what someone was saying, if they say I'm not smart enough, the other thing that we want to do is talk to them about how that feels. So I kind of did it backwards. If I were having this conversation with a child, I would start with, is that hard? When you feel like your brain, you can't do the same things your friends can, you have to study harder, you are messy, or whatever it is. When you feel like that, is that hard? So we're feeling their feelings, helping them feel their feelings first, and then we're helping them see what's really going on. You cannot help them see what's really going on, though, if you don't actually get into their world with them. Remember, you don't agree with them that they're stupid. You need to get into their world with them, though. How does that affect you, child? What is it like for you on a daily basis? You start there, and then you start to talk to them about what it really is. And you really just
yeah.
need to meet them where they are.
So there was a couple of questions about, how can we learn more about building specific skills? I know that's very generic and we have a lot of questions, so I just kind of throw that on there, but do you have an answer for that in
Yeah.
terms of when we're
What I
talking
will
about skills?
Yeah, what I will say is, first of all, executive functioning skills. I mean, the study pro, I just have to say that that's what they teach. So that's a great place to go for skills. I know I teach a lot of, and this is the next question I see, how do we teach them manage their anger and frustration? So let me give you an example of a emotional regulation skill. What I teach is what I call a when, then, until statement. So when I used to work with teens, and now I work with parents who have kids who have anger and frustration, it's really helping kids figure out situations when they need to regulate themselves, what action they can take, and the until. So this is when, then, until. They really are going to decide what outcome they want. So if we talk about a child being disrespectful to their parents, do you want the outcome that happens when you yell at your parents? No. What outcome do you want? What's more likely going to get you there? So when I feel frustrated, then I will, and we give them an action, and that in itself is complicated. So it would take a little while to explain, until I no longer want to yell at my parents. So we actually give them a very concrete statement that helps them figure out, that teaches them how to regulate. And the action they take is really about teaching them their nervous system and how to regulate their body. But this when, then, until statement actually gives them something very concrete to hang on to. That's what I mean by a skill. Otherwise, they're going to be disrespectful every time because they don't know how to do something different. So that's what I mean by a skill. So I hope that kind of answers those two questions.
Yeah, and I will add that on the resources link after we send out the replay link and these slides, I will add our quick guide to executive functions. So you can actually use that with your students and say, when this happens, you're working on the skill of inhibition or initiation or emotional control. So you can actually fill those in as very specific skills that you can be working on. And so there was a question about it's hard when one is a low self-esteem parent trying to help a kid developing self-esteem. Are you just honest with the kid at that point?
100%. So yeah, I work with a lot of parents who are in this situation, realizing, oh wait, my self-esteem isn't so great. So yes, you're honest. What I always say with parents, anything to do with your own emotions, yes, be honest, because your kids will sense it anyway, and tell them how you're working on it. And I think it's great for you to work on the journey together, very honestly. But what I would say to a child is, I struggle with this too. Here's how I'm fixing this. So whenever we share our emotions, which is I think you should absolutely do, we just don't want our kids to worry about us. So we add in that here's what I'm doing. We don't want them to think they have to fix us. So yes, be
And
honest, and I would say go on that journey with them.
yeah. And so Danielle, I think that answers your question too about, I am learning a new skill. I watched this webinar, I was excited about this, and I think we'll try this. How does this feel for you? Right? Not to answer the questions for you, Rachel, but I think you just answered her question. It is going to be recorded and distributed for those who have asked. Jen, in my experience, modeling the skill is the best way to teach. That was a comment. Yes. And I absolutely agree. I was just about to talk about that. And I know there are
Modeling, I
some
will
other
just add this,
questions.
modeling is good as long as you have a strong
Yes.
relationship. Just saying that, because a lot of parents will say, "I model, why isn't it working?" And often what if the relationship isn't strong, they don't wanna do what you're doing. They kinda wanna do the opposite. So I just wanna put that in there.
I don't know if we answered this specifically. So when they're being disrespectful, what skill is missing that you can teach?
Yeah, that's the emotional regulation. So basically,
Got
one of
it.
the main
Right.
things I teach in my program is when you see a negative behavior, their yuck is higher than their skills. That's all it is. They have a lot of yuck and their coping skills have not caught up. So when they learn emotional regulation skills, they that won't happen anymore.
So when they're yelling at their sister, I don't know if we had another question, but when they were yelling at their sister and you were saying that, obviously I
No wonder,
wonder,
yeah.
no wonder, sorry, no wonder um, why this is happening. Can you give an example of how you would follow up with that? So, because I know you said this isn't about accepting that behavior. So, how would you follow up with that? Because punishment isn't necessarily the answer, as you say.
Right. Exactly. And it's so funny. I don't know if this was a question that a parent asked, but if it was, it doesn't surprise me because we all are so tempted to go into the like, what's the solution? It's so funny because, and I am too, by the way. This is not a judgmental. I'm like right in that water with you, but it's funny. But because we're like, that's not enough. And really, and I have to tell myself this too, it is often enough. When a child feels heard, they can re-access the part of the brain that cares about their sister. I'm just going to say that. But let me get into that specific question. So you say, no wonder you yell at your sister because she keeps walking into the room. The next thing I would say is, am I right? Is there anything else you want to say? We're actually letting them do what I call release their yuck. Because when the yuck comes out, that's when they can, again, as I started to say, re-access the part of the brain where solutions and change comes in. If we're not listening to that, they're just going to get defensive. So, am I right? Is there anything else you want to say? Then you pause and you say, you know what, in this family, we don't yell at each other when we're upset. So, let's talk about what you learned about emotional regulation. Let's talk about what you need to do next time. And there's a process I teach called joint problem solving, where you're actually working with your child to figure out how to handle situations like that. That's where I would pull in what did we talk about would happen if you did do this again? And let's continue to practice because clearly this skill is not coming to you quite automatically yet. We need to keep practicing this skill. That's one of the consequences I teach is keep practicing a skill until a child has mastered it. And I will tell you, having my own kids, having done this I've worked with like 4,000 families, they don't want to keep practicing skills. So they're motivated to learn these skills. I'm just going to say that.
Mhm. And I think we have the time for this one last question, which is an extension of that. If they hit the child, would that be different,
Yeah. So
or
hitting
the
usually,
sibling?
yeah, usually hitting happens with younger children. If it's an older child, what I actually say about hitting is you need a safety plan. If you're not bigger than your child, you need a safety plan. Younger children, what we do is we actually say, I won't let you hit. And we actually stop the hitting from happening. The key there is we have to be regulated as an adult. We're sharing our regulated energy with
Mhm.
our child in that moment. So it's a really quick answer to aggression, which is a big topic, but we're saying, I won't let you hit, and we're stopping them. And if it's an
Mhm.
older child and they're bigger, you need a safety plan.
Well, I do want to share, Rachel, that this brings up so many of my memories of things that I've had discussions with my daughter about. And to everybody that's out there, one of the things that I think is so helpful was I did ask my daughter at one point, and both my kids, if they feel loved just the way they are. Do they feel like they deserve to be loved just the way they are? And I did ask them if they feel they have the tools and what tools they'd like to see developed. And, you have to find the right time, but it is really helpful. And I think that, having these open conversations with these kids is great. And just, I think they feel like, wow, you're coming to me and asking me my opinion on these big topics, and it's helpful. And I think the other piece that's so useful is sometimes just letting them sit. So if they're screaming, especially in the car, sometimes I just literally say nothing because that just like lets that reverberate, right? And then it's later when they are regulated that we're able to address it. So I think that's really
And
helpful.
can I
And
just say one last thing to wrap up what you just said because it's so
yes,
important? As a former therapist,
please.
to give you a glimpse, what I heard over and over and over was some variation of this. They would say, I know my parents love me, but they only like me when I'm doing or feeling the way they want me to. That's how they feel. They
Mhm.
love me, but they only like me, they only respect me when I'm doing what they want me to do, my homework, my blah, 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 or feeling the way they want me to feel. I just want you to know that's what a lot of kids feel. I'm done talking. So thank you so much, Debbie.
Well, no, we're good. Yes, thank you. We so much. Everybody's saying how amazing it was. As always, it is amazing. So we so appreciate you being here as always. And I will make sure to send all of these resources out to everybody and the replay link and the slides. So thank you everybody for being here. Thank you to my dog for being quiet for 99% of the time, and success all around. And have a great summer, everybody. We'll see you on this webinar series back in September. We have some great speakers already lined up. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.